What does it mean to be edgy? For many people, it means being weird, a tryhard, standing out in an awkward, uncomfortable way, cringe, in essence. Something too intense, too dramatic, or too extra. But to me, being edgy means being yourself. The flair of a lost age in games. The type of spark that used to define characters and whole genres, in a way that is so distant and faded amidst an ocean of safe, sanitized stories. And I already see people rolling their eyes by just hearing me or seeing the thumb and title. I know some will ride with me and others will go against me. But no matter your opinion, would you kindly bear with me? To understand the rise of edgy culture, we must go way back and understand the late 90s and early 2000s, when everything changed rapidly. When cheerful, cute mascots, goofy protagonists, and good boy scouts were all flipped into sarcastic little animals, buff dudes, and the coolest anti-heroes ever. And that happened because everyone wanted something against the common. Everyone wanted to feel cool and to rise against their parents with games that they didn't want in the house, blasting music that was called devil worship, and media that embraced violence, attitude, or rebellion. There was a huge trade from the bright, colorful era to the raw and unfiltered. Cruelty was turned up just a notch and stylized beyond recognition. Simply the coolest thing ever. So cool, in fact, that many franchises got a revitalization because of it. Jak 2 was a complete change from Jak 1. Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess spat in the face of the universes before that, straying away from classic Zelda to a more gritty one. Prince of Persia went from a Disney fairy tale to a gothic metal blood-shattering awesomeness, and so many more. When this culture struck, games changed. Everything got bolder and serious, dramatic, into a certain ironic way, more alive. And that aesthetic defined the era I grew up with. And honestly, as someone who loves this, I have to say that most people don't even know what edgy means anymore. I still see them call Mortal Kombat edgy, and violence stopped being edgy decades ago. Gore isn't shocking, and the same goes for sexual content. Family Guy made fun of how trivial both are over 20 years ago in its intro. And when something becomes a meta joke, it becomes normal. Gore is as mainstream as it gets. Deadpool made billions. Almost every AAA game has dismemberment system. TV is constantly trying to outgrow itself, and promiscuity became normalized. Real edginess isn't blood or sex. It's as simple as personality. It's the attitude you show to the world. And I'd say the edgiest thing today are those Christian montage edits, with slowed plus reverb and that skull emoji. I don't get it because I'm old. And that's not because religion is cool per se, it's just because it goes against the current safe cultural vibe of atheism. But I'll get back to that in a moment. Going back in track, dudes like Virgil, Alex Mercer, or Prince weren't edgy because they were simply spilling blood. It's because they were cool and the stories allowed them to be cool. Their worlds treated them with seriousness and weight. Anything like that nowadays would be turned into a Reddit-like joke. If you were to take one of the most underrated edgelords of all time, and one of my personal favorites, War from Darksiders, you'll see a franchise that works pretty well due to conviction. Everything from character design, line delivery, tone, all of it leans into the aesthetic without fear. War looks like Arthas, a space marine, and Kratos had a gangbang and he was born out of it. Peak character design. War is honorable, unshakable, focused on pushing towards his goal of restoring equilibrium, and the reason why it works so much is because the game doesn't mock him for any of this. Sure, he gets manipulated, makes mistakes, and people talk down to him, but he's never toned down and always treated like a badass no matter the situation. And that is exactly the secret behind this writing, or any type of writing, really. The moment you take a character like Batman and say, "You are just a man in a bat suit," you kill the magic. Suspension of disbelief matters because it lets you enjoy something in its own terms. But it still needs to be, good. Sure, edgy material can be dumb if it's poorly written. But when the labeling of everything as cringe strike before it gets a chance to spark again, that is when things get so stale and predictable that they become creatively bankrupt. And that makes me ask you, why do so many modern games feel the same? And the reason for it is because everything is made to mimic reality, even when it's set in a totally different world from ours. Everything needs to be grounded, safe, cinematic. Like I mentioned on my last video, you would never get scenes today like,
"That nickname you love so much. Wanna know how I got it? Actually, why don't I give you a demonstration? I think it's time for Jack to let her rip."
Characters like that disappeared because everyone writes with the same mindset. Boldness died the moment we stopped striving for the unreal and started to imitate the terrible world of Hollywood. And this is exactly when all this died. The moment safe edge became normalized. On a slight tangent of the usage of edgy writing across all medias, there was a time when saying God isn't real or making a priest the antagonist was shocking. Now it's just the safest, most predictable choice in the book and really boring. Everyone has seen the Christian's bad trope for 30 years straight. That's not subversive, it's just saturated. Same as criticizing capitalism. It's just expected. I even talked about it in a video you can check out. But to revive such style nowadays, the way it's intended to be, there needs to exist a clash of perspectives, friction and plurality. Something impossible because a modern writer's room are all filled with people that think the same. And these snowflakes hate when you poke fun of their beliefs, or simply don't want them in games. And when you cannot confront the flaws in the things you like, you will never be able to create a good, different, and meaningful story with soul. And many studios would rather sink financially than risking stepping outside that comfort zone. Modern day edgy writing would make a lot of people mad, and a lot of people happy, because it's anti-media. And modern day anti-media would be complicated. And the most frustrating part is that the reason we don't have talented people around, it's because of the culture that was built. This culture where anything that goes against the X and Reddit mobs results in risks of doxing, lawsuits, and outrage created the phenomenon of toxic positivity. And ironically, if you aren't aligned with their train of thought, you cannot be marketable. Unless you bow down to a sanitized, universal, and safe direction saying the exact same, copy-pasted from the mainstream, you will be labeled as a villain. And when everything becomes identical, your emotions stop being challenged, your critical thinking dies. You're told what to feel and how to think. All this because people hate when stuff they don't like gets a chance to exist. The mere thought of something they disagree with gets a highlight makes them furious. But back in the day, we had all kind of stories. From the grounded, to the weird, to the stylish, to the bizarre. You had an opportunity to try and see what stuck. There was room for experimentation and people to follow it. And that contrast is so obvious that when you look at Eastern media like anime, manga, games and so on, they still embrace crazy stuff and appeal to what people want. The reason why they dominate every medium nowadays is because they still carry a sense of artistic freedom. It's not just big boobs and cool dudes, it's personality and plurality. And the Western fiends are trying to sanitize even the Asian titles, for fuck's sake. Changing dialogue, censoring, etc. Such miserable creatures they are. But just to end this with a good note, we don't need to bring back the 2000s as a whole. I am not like a millennial that thinks only their childhood was good. We need true diversity and new fresh heads to create, like back in the day. When you look at it, creativity means the ability to produce or use original and unusual ideas. So, how did video games, the medium with the most potential for imagination, ended up producing some of the safest, most identical protagonists across genres? Where are the cool cyborgs like Raiden, cool powerhouses like Starkiller, old school taking shit from nobody Kratos? These guys were serious, not in a grounded way, but in a way that you could finally play as a serious threat and a force of nature, like video games are supposed to be. At least some of them. And not only heroes, but the same can be said for villains. Bring back villains with undeniable aura, like Virgil, Senator Armstrong, Wesker, Darth Vader. Antagonists who felt like evil itself was walking among men, only for you, this cool, dark protagonist, to be the only hope to stop them. You may not enjoy this trope as much as I do, but maybe it's time to stop this and try something different. Who knows? I'm not saying it's the solution. All I'm saying is to give it a try. Just so you don't get sold to Tencent or Saudi Arabia. Anyways, bye.